The morning sun filtered through the cracked blinds of apartment 3B as Maria Rodriguez stared at the eviction notice taped to her door. Her hands trembled as she read the bold red letters. Final notice, 30 days to vacate. 3 children slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that their world was about to crumble. Maria had been working double shifts at the diner, but her husband's medical bills had consumed every penny they earned. The cancer treatments were expensive, and insurance only covered so much. She pressed her back against the door and slid down to the floor, burying her face in her hands. What she didn't know was that across the street, behind the lace curtains of a modest 2-story house, someone was watching. Sarah Mitchell, 73 years old, with silver hair and kind eyes, had witnessed this scene play out dozens of times over the past decade. She knew the look of desperation, the weight of impossible choices, the silence that comes before tears. Sarah had lived in this neighborhood for 47 years. She had watched young families move in with hope and dreams, only to be crushed by circumstances beyond their control. She had seen children's faces pressed against windows as moving trucks took away their belongings. And she had made a decision long ago that would change more lives than anyone could imagine. Quietly, Sarah reached for her checkbook and began writing. The amount was significant, enough to cover 3 months of rent. She had done this so many times that the motion was automatic, practiced, but the weight of each signature never lessened. This wasn't just money, it was hope, delivered in secret, expecting nothing in return. The pattern had begun 12 years earlier when Sarah first witnessed the Henderson family's eviction. She watched from her kitchen window as 8-year-old Tommy Henderson cried while his parents loaded their few possessions into a borrowed pickup truck. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Tommy's tears, about the shame in his father's eyes, about how quickly a family could lose everything. The next morning, Sarah walked to Riverside Properties, the management company that owned most of the rental homes in the area. She spoke with the manager, Mrs. Chen, and made an unusual request. She wanted to set up an anonymous payment system, a way to help families who were struggling without them knowing where the help came from. Mrs. Chen was skeptical at first. "Why don't you just give them the money directly?" she asked. But Sarah shook her head firmly. "Pride is a powerful thing," she explained. "Sometimes people need help, but they also need to keep their dignity. If they knew it came from a neighbor, they might feel ashamed or obligated. This way, they can focus on getting back on their feet." The system was simple but effective. Sarah would identify families in distress. She had a keen eye for the signs. Lights turned off during the day to save electricity. Children playing outside more often because the apartment was too hot or too cold. Parents walking instead of driving, selling possessions at yard sales, the telltale stress lines that appeared when bills piled up. She would then contact Mrs. Chen with the family's address, and the payment would be made anonymously through a trust fund Sarah had established. The families received letters stating that a community assistance program had covered their rent, giving them time to recover financially. Over the years, Sarah's secret mission expanded. What started as occasional rent payments became a systematic approach to helping her community. She kept meticulous records in a small notebook hidden in her bedroom drawer, not for tax purposes or recognition, but to ensure she never missed someone who needed help. The Johnson family received 4 months of assistance when their father was laid off from the factory. The Williams family got help when their mother was hospitalized with pneumonia. The young college student in apartment 1A received 3 months of support when her financial aid was delayed. Sarah's list grew longer each year. Her own life remained modest. She drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic, shopped with coupons, and wore the same winter coat for 8 seasons. Friends often commented on her frugal lifestyle, not knowing that she was spending nearly 60% of her retirement income on rent payments for others. Sarah had worked as a school secretary for 35 years, never married, and had no children of her own. Her neighbors were her family. Their children were her legacy. She lived alone, but was never lonely because she felt connected to every family she helped. The closest she came to being discovered was when 10-year-old Emma Rodriguez left a drawing under the windshield wiper of every car on the street. It showed a stick-figure angel with the words, "Thank you for helping my family," written in purple crayon. Sarah found the drawing on her car and kept it pressed between the pages of her Bible. Mrs. Chen at the rental office often marveled at the mysterious benefactor. "Whoever this person is," she told her assistant, "they're an angel. I've never seen anything like it in 20 years of property management." The secret became more challenging to keep as the neighborhood began to change. Gentrification brought new developments and higher rents, pushing many long-time residents toward displacement. Sarah found herself helping the same families multiple times as the cost of living continued to rise. There was Mrs. Patterson, the widow with arthritis who cleaned office buildings at night. Sarah paid her rent for 6 months straight when the building owners doubled the cleaning fee but didn't increase her pay. There was Marcus, the single father studying nursing while working part-time at a grocery store. Sarah supported him for an entire year, knowing that his future career would help others. The emotional toll was significant. Sarah would lie awake at night, calculating and recalculating her finances, figuring out how to help more families with her limited resources. She started eating less, turning her heat down in winter and cancelling her small cable television package to free up more money for rent payments. Her neighbor Dorothy began to worry about Sarah's health. "You're getting too thin," Dorothy would say during their weekly coffee visits. "Are you eating enough? Do you need help with groceries?" Sarah would always smile and deflect, claiming she was simply watching her figure at her age. What Dorothy didn't see was Sarah's growing notebook, now in its 3rd volume, filled with addresses, payment dates, and brief notes about each family's situation. Entries like Rodriguez family, husband's chemo treatments going well, Maria got promotion at diner, might not need help much longer, or Thompson twins started college, parents finally caught up on bills, success story. Each entry represented not just a financial transaction, but a human story of struggle, perseverance, and hope. Sarah had become the invisible guardian angel of Maple Street, watching over her community with the dedication of a mother protecting her children. Sarah's health began to decline in her 72nd year. Arthritis made it difficult to write checks, and her vision wasn't as sharp as it once was. Still, she continued her mission with unwavering determination. The notebook entries became shorter, but the payments never stopped. Dr. Harrison, her physician, expressed concern during her annual checkup. "Sarah, your blood pressure is elevated and you've lost considerable weight. Are you under stress about something?" She assured him she was fine, just dealing with the normal challenges of aging. The truth was, Sarah was worried about what would happen to the families when she was gone. She had some savings left, but not enough to help everyone indefinitely. The weight of this responsibility kept her awake many nights, staring at the ceiling and praying for guidance. One particularly difficult month, Sarah faced a choice that would haunt her. 3 families needed help simultaneously. The Garcias were facing eviction due to unexpected medical bills. The Browns needed assistance after their car was repossessed, and the father lost his job due to transportation issues. And elderly Mr. Kim was struggling after his Social Security benefits were delayed. Sarah calculated her available funds and realized she could help 2 families completely or all 3 families partially. She chose to split her resources, giving each family enough to buy time, but not enough to solve their problems entirely. It was a compromise that left her feeling inadequate, despite the fact that her help was the difference between having a roof over their heads or sleeping in their car. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table and wrote in her notebook, "Not enough, never enough. God, please help me find a way to do more." Her handwriting was shaky, reflecting both her physical condition and emotional state. The turning point came on a cold February morning when Sarah collapsed in her kitchen while preparing breakfast. Dorothy, who had been increasingly worried about her friend, had been calling every morning to check on her. When Sarah didn't answer, Dorothy used her spare key to enter the house and found Sarah unconscious on the floor. At the hospital, doctors discovered that Sarah had been severely malnourished and was suffering from exhaustion. "Mrs. Mitchell," Dr. Harrison said gently, "you haven't been taking care of yourself. Your body is showing signs of chronic stress and malnutrition. What's been going on?" Sarah remained quiet about her activities, but Dorothy was determined to understand what had been happening to her dear friend. While Sarah recovered, Dorothy offered to help organize her house and pay bills. It was then that she discovered the notebooks hidden in the bedroom drawer. Dorothy sat on Sarah's bed, reading page after page of meticulous records documenting years of secret payments. The scope of Sarah's generosity was breathtaking. She had helped over 40 families, spending more than $180,000 of her own money over 12 years. "My God, Sarah," Dorothy whispered to herself, tears streaming down her face. "What have you been doing?" She understood now why Sarah had grown so thin, why she wore the same clothes year after year, why she never seemed to have money for small luxuries. Dorothy faced a dilemma. She knew Sarah would be mortified if her secret was revealed, but she also realized that Sarah's health was suffering because she couldn't afford to take care of herself while taking care of everyone else. The community needed to know what this remarkable woman had been doing. When Sarah returned from the hospital, Dorothy was waiting with the notebook spread across the kitchen table. "We need to talk," Dorothy said softly as Sarah stared at her exposed secret. Sarah's face went pale, and she slowly lowered herself into a chair across from her friend. "Please don't tell anyone," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "These families, they need their dignity. If they knew it was me, they'd be embarrassed. Some of them might even move away out of shame." Dorothy reached across the table and took Sarah's weathered hands in hers. "Sarah, you're killing yourself. You're literally sacrificing your health, your nutrition, your well-being for others. That's beautiful, but it's not sustainable. What happens when you're gone? What happens to these families then?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know," she admitted. "I lie awake thinking about that. I've helped them for so long, but I know I can't help them forever. I couldn't watch them suffer when I had the means to help." The two women sat in silence for several minutes, both processing the magnitude of what had been revealed. Dorothy finally spoke. "There has to be a better way. A way that honors what you've done, but also creates something sustainable for the future." Sarah looked up hopefully. "What do you mean? What if we could turn your individual generosity into community action? What if people knew that there was an angel among them and they were inspired to become angels themselves?" Dorothy suggested. "Not revealing your identity immediately, but showing people what's possible when neighbors care for neighbors." Sarah shook her head vigorously. "No, Dorothy. I can't have people knowing it was me. I can't have those families feeling like they owe me something or feeling ashamed that they needed help." Dorothy nodded understandingly. "What if there was a way to honor what you've done without making it about you personally?" Dorothy's plan began to take shape over the following weeks. She approached Pastor Williams at the community church, a man known for his discretion and wisdom. Without revealing Sarah's identity, Dorothy explained that someone in the community had been secretly helping families with rent for over a decade, and that this person's health was now suffering due to their generosity. Pastor Williams was astounded. "Do you mean to tell me that there's been an angel working in our community for 12 years and none of us knew about it?" he asked. Dorothy nodded, showing him photocopies of some of the notebook pages with identifying information blacked out. The pastor studied the records carefully. Many of the families listed were members of his congregation. He remembered their struggles, their prayers for help, their testimonies about unexpected blessings that helped them through difficult times. "This explains so much," he murmured. "So many families have shared stories about mysterious rent assistance that came just when they needed it most." Dorothy and Pastor Williams developed a plan. They would organize a special Sunday service focused on community support and hidden acts of kindness. During the service, the pastor would reveal that someone in their community had been secretly helping families for years. Without identifying the person, they would then challenge the congregation to consider how they might continue this legacy of caring. Sarah was hesitant when Dorothy explained the plan. "What if people figure out it's me?" she worried. "What if the families I've helped feel embarrassed?" "The pastor will handle it carefully," Dorothy assured her. "He'll focus on the inspiration of the story, not on identifying you. And maybe, just maybe, it will inspire others to help so that the burden doesn't fall on one person anymore." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed to attend the service, not knowing that it would change everything. Sunday morning arrived with an unusual energy in the small community church. Pastor Williams had promoted the service as one focused on hidden blessings and community angels, and the turnout was larger than usual. Many families that Sarah had helped over the years were present, along with longtime neighbors and friends. Sarah sat in her usual pew, 3 rows from the back, wearing her best dress, a simple navy blue outfit she'd owned for 15 years. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. Dorothy sat beside her, offering quiet support. Pastor Williams began his sermon with a question. "How many of you have experienced an unexpected blessing when you needed it most? A moment when help arrived just in time from a source you couldn't identify?" Hands went up throughout the congregation. Maria Rodriguez raised her hand, remembering the mysterious rent assistance that had saved her family during her husband's cancer treatment. Marcus, now a registered nurse, raised his hand, thinking about the year of support that had allowed him to complete his education. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly cleaning woman, raised her hand, tears already forming in her eyes. "Today," Pastor Williams continued, "I want to tell you about someone extraordinary. For over 12 years, a member of our community has been secretly paying rent for struggling families. Not once or twice, but consistently, regularly, expecting nothing in return and asking for no recognition." A murmur went through the congregation. People began looking around, wondering who among them could be this mysterious benefactor. "This person," the pastor continued, "has helped over 40 families, spending nearly $200,000 of their own money. They've done this while living modestly, sacrificing their own comfort to ensure that children had roofs over their heads and families could stay together." Sarah's face flushed, and she gripped Dorothy's hand tightly. Pastor Williams continued, his voice growing more emotional. "This person kept detailed records, not for recognition or tax purposes, but to ensure no one in need was forgotten. They wrote notes about each family's progress, celebrating small victories and supporting them through setbacks." The congregation was completely silent, hanging on every word. When the Henderson family was evicted 12 years ago, this person decided that no other family would suffer the same fate if they could help it. When medical bills threatened to destroy the Rodriguez family, help appeared mysteriously. When young Marcus needed support to finish nursing school, someone made sure he could continue his education. One by one, Pastor Williams mentioned situations that various congregation members recognized as their own. With each story, more people began to cry, realizing that their prayers had been answered by someone sitting among them. This person's health is now suffering because they've given so much of themselves to others. They've literally sacrificed their own well-being to care for their neighbors, and they still don't want recognition. They're here today, and they'd prefer to remain anonymous. Sarah was crying now, overwhelmed by hearing her secret mission described so beautifully. She had never thought of herself as extraordinary. She had simply done what felt right. But, Pastor Williams said, raising his voice slightly, I believe this community needs to know about this gift. Not to embarrass anyone, not to create obligation, but to show us what's possible when love is put into action. He paused, looking directly at Sarah, though she didn't realize he had identified her through Dorothy's careful guidance. Sarah Mitchell, he said gently, would you please stand up? The congregation turned to look at the silver-haired woman in the navy dress who was shaking her head and trying to shrink into her pew. The moment Sarah's name was spoken, the entire congregation erupted, not in applause, but in something deeper. A collective gasp of recognition, followed by tears, followed by something that sounded like a prayer of gratitude, rising from dozens of voices simultaneously. Maria Rodriguez stood up first, tears streaming down her face. You saved my family, she said simply. During my husband's cancer, we were going to lose everything. Marcus, the nurse, stood next. You made it possible for me to finish school. I've helped save lives because you believed in me. One by one, people began standing. Mrs. Patterson, the Thompson twins' parents, Mr. Kim, the Browns, the Garcias, family after family rose to their feet, each with their own story of mysterious help that had arrived just when they needed it most. Sarah sat frozen, overwhelmed by the faces looking at her with such love and gratitude. These weren't looks of pity or obligation. They were looks of pure appreciation for someone who had loved them in their darkest moments. Finally, Dorothy helped Sarah to her feet. The entire congregation was standing now, not just the families she had helped, but everyone who had been inspired by her story. Pastor Williams spoke through his own tears. Sarah, you thought you were giving in secret, but your love has been visible in every family that stayed together, every child who didn't have to change schools, every parent who could focus on healing instead of worrying about rent. Through her tears, Sarah finally spoke. I couldn't watch my neighbors suffer when I could help. You're my family. The congregation surrounded her then, not with overwhelming gratitude that would embarrass her, but with gentle love that assured her she would never carry this burden alone again. Thank you for listening to this incredible story of love, sacrifice, and community. Sarah's example reminds us that the greatest acts of kindness often happen in silence, and that we all have the power to be someone's angel. Please share in the comments where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that restore faith in humanity. Your support helps us continue sharing these beautiful tales of human compassion.